Good morning and welcome to my garden. It's December, the first month of summer here in Australia, and that means hot temperatures, high humidity and summer storms with hail here in South-east Queensland. But lately we haven't had a lot of rain. I've been doing lots of cleaning up in my garden recently. This Wedge Garden is looking very different to how it did last season. It's moving towards being a beautiful feature garden beside my future pond. You can see I've got a spider lily. My agapanthus is just starting to flower. That's a beautiful dark purple one. I'm really looking forward to that coming open. And it matches so nicely with the purple of the society garlic. I had a crop of corn in here. Got 37 cobs from this crop. There were quite a few cobs that weren't fertilised, and I think that's because this row in here didn't germinate, and so there were too many spaces between the plants and not all of the cobs were fertilised. I left a couple of cobs on the plants so that I could use them for seed, but I think they've all been eaten by other animals. I've already interplanted with carrot seeds, and you can see there are a lot of carrots coming up in between the corn. These yellow bush beans have been quite prolific. I've had a lot of beans from those. It's been very yum to have beans on the table again. I have rosella plants coming on, and I'll be harvesting from them in a few months. Contour 1 on the east. I have some sweet peas flowering now. It's nice that they've continued to flower in summer. I didn't think they did. Purple King beans have been quite delicious. Looks like we've got a cucamelon plant climbing up the trellis too. My jalapeno chilies are producing well. I'm getting some capsicums from these plants. I've transplanted a number of spring onion plants over here, and you can see they're sprouting again. Bird's eye chilies are starting to ripen. There are a lot of flowers on that bush. I have planted some okra and sunflower down here at the end. It's not growing fast, but it is growing. My nectarine and my apricot, another nectarine, they're looking very healthy and very happy. So this is probably the third season they've been in the ground. So they will be just putting on size and developing the roots. They're not expected to develop fruit this year. This little one over here is less than 1 year old. I've got zinnias coming back. I did sprinkle the seeds from the spent flowers along here. The chop and drop row is growing quite tall. Now typically I would chop it down as soon as it reached my head height, but I have observed from previous seasons that maybe it is good for the garden for it to stay there. We've got some hot temperatures. I'm allowing the chop and drop row here to act as a windbreak, to give some shade, to protect the ground. Once the rains come and there's more moisture in the ground, then it'll be okay to chop it down because the ground will be moist again, and then the plants will be able to grow again and put on more biomass. Are you enjoying hearing about my garden? Let me know. Hit the like button or send me a comment. It'd be good to hear from you. Contour 2 on the east. This bed's quite the weed patch. Maybe that's because that's how it started, with lots of weeds. Among the other weeds that I have in this garden, I have quite the nutgrass challenge. Now this nutgrass is growing really thick and there's not much I can do about it. Nutgrass really does take over. It has runners under the ground, and every time you break one of those runners, it activates the nut to grow and to multiply. I'm not trying to dig it out because I know it's a waste of time. I know that the Department of Primary Industries of Australia put out a study explaining the best way to take control of nutgrass, and that is competition. to smother it, to outcompete it. Generally, that's done really well with brassicas. In this bed, however, nothing seems to be keeping up with it. I think this will be a perennial problem I'm just going to have to live with. At the end here I have okra, likewise here. I've got my strawberries growing here too. I've been harvesting asparagus, and that's been quite delicious. I need to come up with some kind of cage or framework for them because they keep falling on the path, and it seems that these chairs that I have been using as asparagus cages just don't keep them all on the bed. I've got 2 rhubarb plants that I've also been harvesting from. I quite enjoy rhubarb with apple, and someone suggested I put some of my rosellas with it. So apple, rhubarb and rosella together, quite a delightful dessert. My roses look so happy. Well, these ones are finished and need to be dead-headed, but they're actually quite lovely. Very excited. My grapevine has grown all the way up to here. I'm going to need to tie that to the trellis there. That was a seed-grown grape, and I have 5 other grapes along here too. The bananas I'm growing for chop and drop are growing really well. I have gone along the back here and dug out the suckers that were too close to the trellis. It looks like some of them are coming back pretty quickly. Some volunteer pumpkins that were growing, and they were creating a blockage for mowing this area. And so I put it up and over a trellis. I don't know whether the pumpkins will continue to hang on to the vine while they're up there. I may need to support them. But I'm going to encourage the pumpkins to grow here into the sugarcane. I'm still a little bit concerned it's going to put weight on the grape trellis, but I'll keep redirecting it over the archway. And my grapevine at the end here, it's got lots of growth on it too. That's great. The bananas along here are growing really well, and I can see they're going to provide a lot of good chop and drop. I've actually recently planted some more bananas. I dug out the pups that came from the dwarf bananas and planted them along here. Now, why would I plant them here, and why in this position? We have a septic system here, and the septic tank empties out into trenches under the ground. So when it was very dry and we had no rain, most of the grass on the property was very brown, but the grass immediately here above the soakage trench was green. So at that time, we marked the edge of the green grass growing above the soakage trench. Then when I planted the bananas, I planted them about 1 metre lower than green grass. Banana roots spread about 1 metre from the plant. Being 1 metre from the soakage trench, they'll be able to benefit from the moisture in the soil as it runs downhill under the ground, without them being close enough to cause problems to the soakage trench with their roots. So this whole row, they are all dwarf bananas. I don't know what variety of bananas they were. When I first was given these bananas, I was told they were either Cavendish or ladyfinger. My Windbreak does such a good job of keeping the wind down in the garden, keeping it calm in there. At one stage I planted some melon seeds, and it looks like some of those melons are starting to come up. So that'll be lovely to have rock melon and watermelon growing all through this garden. Let's have a look at my mangoes. This spring, they all had a lot of flowers on them. And then we had a number of mangoes set. I think we had 14 on this one, 11 on that one, and something like 40 on the last one. But over time, the fruit have been knocked off. The trees themselves are about 3 years old, and they've been in the garden for 1 year. So I guess any fruit we would have got would have been a bonus. There was one last fruit on this one, and it looks like it's fallen off too. How's this one going? There's one there, and there's one here. Okay, we'll see how that goes. It'd be lovely to get some mangoes. I moved a couple of IBCs into place. These are 1,000 litre cubes that can hold water for me. So I've now got 2 near the shed, and I can use them to fill this one, and I can use this one to water my mangoes and my hedgerow. I've got a lot of new growth on my mangoes. It's very pleasing. The arrowroot is growing up. That'll be good. That'll be useful to use as chop and drop to keep this grass under control. I've collected some more rocks from around the property and brought them to this central location. I still have hopes of developing this pond one day. Those rocks will be all used for the pond. Contour one in the middle. Looks like one of my zinnias threw seed around the corner. I haven't done much with this garden. I wasn't sure what to do with this weed. Typically the best way to deal with weeds like this is to outcompete them. Plant brassicas and such things that have a lot of leaf and that would crowd out the sun that these plants need to thrive. This is not the time of year for us to plant brassicas. It's far too hot and they won't thrive. However, I have been advised to try some herbs because herbs can grow really well and they're really bushy and they will outcompete that weed. My lemon tree is loaded with fruit. Wow, she's happy and look at all the fruit. Producing a beautiful crop of fruit for us, and it looks like the first couple are ripening. So that's really lovely. Oh, there's another one down there. This tree had started to lean significantly. I staked it to help it stand up more straight, and this branch has grown since then. So that's good. I might actually try and pull it up straighter. My red carrots have gone to seed, and it doesn't look like they produce nearly as many seeds as do the purple and the yellow carrots. Maybe there are some viable seeds in there, but actually, I can't see it. They're really small. Oh, there's one there. I don't mind all sorts of flavours of carrots, but I do know that the orange carrots tend to have a flavour that sometimes the recipe just needed that orange carrot, not the yellow one or the purple one. Aha, this one does. Yes, there's a good number of viable seeds on that. So I hypothesise that this plant was too small to provide proper seed, whereas that one that's got the good seed on it, its root is still in the ground. My wedge garden on the north, and this has all been planted up. We've got corn along this dripper line, and I've got beans along this outside dripper line. I love this gerbera. Rosella here looking happy and healthy. I planted bulbs all around the perimeter of the garden, and they've been beautiful, producing lovely flowers. Contour 1 on the north. I've recently done a big clean-up along here. I've removed all the carrot weed that was running rampant. I'm sure it'll all come back to remind me. There is a lot of this weed here. I think it's a form of Pennywort. I did dig some of it out along this row, but I didn't spend all day getting all of it because, as you can see, it gets right in under some plants and I'm just not going to be able to get it all out. I'm sure to leave behind some rhizomes. It's interesting that this row is not growing back nearly as fast as Contour 1 on the east. I wonder if it's because it's been more established over there. The Thai basil was cracking and splitting and was falling over all over the path and all over the chop and drop row. So I chopped that down. It's coming back beautifully now. Likewise, the senna was falling all over the path and wasn't growing very thickly, and it had largely died off in the centre. So I've pruned it back and it's come back well too. It may not produce a lot of biomass, but even the fact that it's growing back energetically now will assist in it placing its nutrients in the soil. One of the principles of Syntropics is that plants grow in succession from each other. So while some plants grow fast and early, for example the pigeon pea and the basil, other plants grow slower, like this calistemon. It's now growing tall enough that I can see it will start producing good biomass for the chop and drop now. This tristaniopsis is growing very slowly, and it'll take a while before it's producing enough foliage for me to use as chop and drop. On this archway, I've tried to plant a number of things, but for various reasons, it doesn't seem to be growing so happily. I still haven't put a dripper up along the edge here to water the plants on the trellis. Whereas on contour 1 on the east, the plants growing on the trellis actually receive water from the watering system on the vegetable side of the garden, and I have dripper down that way. So what I'm going to need to do is put an extension from the pipe and bring it out this way. I actually think I need to move the entire watering system back this way further so that it can water all the way to the end of the bed. However, I have a dream of having retaining blocks along this side of the garden bed, firstly to keep the weeds out and secondly to define the beautiful curve we have here. When that happens, I'm sure everything will need to be lined up again and it'll move a little bit, so I might wait on adding that bit to the watering system there until we redo the beds. This season, this bed's been planted up with zucchini and eggplant. I have a trellis here for this climbing squash, which appears to not have germinated, so it's been a couple of weeks, so I'm going to have to replant that one. Another weed I've found in the garden is this. I believe this is Catsclaw. I do not know how it came to my garden, but the Catsclaw vine is spreading prolifically in this area in South-east Queensland. And it seems that they may have blown in here from up on the hill. Equally, they may have come to my garden with this straw that I brought in. I'm really keen to not be bringing any more straw or manure from anywhere because I'm really tired of bringing in weeds. Instead, I'll be relying on my chop and drop rows to provide my mulch, and I will be pruning the arrowroot, and I'll use a mulcher to chop that down fine so I can put it on top of the garden beds as mulch around my plants. I have eggplant at the front here, and then I have 2 zucchini plants further back. Now you'll notice I've got these fencing panels. I've had repeated lack of success with zucchini in this garden. Mildew is very common, and every single year I've had the plants grow up beautiful and healthy for about 6 weeks, and then they just shrivel and melt with the mildew. It's really depressing. It's really, really sad. So what I've decided to try this season, I've planted the zucchini 90 centimetres apart with this fence panel here to just lift them off the ground. I've tried to grow them on a trellis before. I know some people manage to have them grow up a string. I haven't worked that art out yet. But I'm hoping that with this trellis there's more airflow around, and hopefully that'll mean there's less mildew. Alternatively, I'm just going to have to grow zucchini at a different time of year. Maybe that's what I need to do. This volunteer tomato gained itself a trellis to scramble all over when I cleaned up the garden bed. At this time of year, I don't get really nice tomatoes. They've always got signs of bugs in them, and the colour isn't very uniform. Contour 2 on the north. I cleaned this bed up a while ago, and I pulled out all the volunteer brassicas that had gone to seed, and I scattered the seeds all along the row. So I've been able to prune off some of these brassicas as baby leaf, and I've been able to enjoy that for meals. I have taro growing here, but the rest of this row is pretty much all chop and drop. I've planted a lot of arrowroot along the row because I've come to the point where I think that arrowroot could be very useful if I put it through a shredder, through a mulcher, and then have it chopped fine so I can put it on the garden around my vegetables. I mean, I think that'd go great around this zucchini. And because arrowroot grows so fast and so luscious, I think that'd be a great use for it. Now the vegetable side. The carrots I have here were sprinkle sown amongst onions that I was growing. So most of them are purple carrots, because I sprinkled my seeds from my purple carrots here. And that's the way I choose to get my carrots these days. I sprinkle my own seed, and then I'd be very grateful when it comes up. Looks like this was an orange or maybe a yellow seed. So I've got 2 colours of carrots there. I'm harvesting celery. I've recently harvested red onions from here. Some more celery, and I had some other onions here. Harvesting parsley, some more carrots that are growing on. My capsicums are not serving me so well. They keep dropping their fruit, and we've had a couple of really good ones that have been eaten by animals. So I did have a bag over the whole plant. Capsicum's a kind of plant that actually needs insects to fertilise them. Putting a bag over the whole plant will prevent the fruit from being fertilised. And I wonder if that was the case, because we've been through a period where we haven't had any fruit off these plants. So I've taken the bags off to see if it changes when the insects can get to the flowers to fertilise them. This was another patch where the brassica went to seed, and I spread the seeds here. And I've been picking the tops for salads. These potatoes are volunteers, leftovers from last season. So when I get around to planting up the new section of the bed, I'll dig them and see if we got any more potatoes from that volunteer. Likewise, these tomatoes are volunteers. I would never plant tomatoes near potatoes because they are both susceptible to the same diseases and pests. So I wouldn't choose to plant them here. But it is summer. You don't plant too much in summer here in South-east Queensland because it's just going to get too hot and things will die before they produce their fruit. So having them grow here as volunteers, I'll let them be, and perhaps they'll produce some tomatoes and potatoes for me. I planted some Russian garlic here, and it looks like some of them have died off. Generally, when you plant a patch of garlic, you don't wait till everything's died off because you'll lose your first ones. Once your first ones have died off, oh, it looks like that one's rotted. Looks like I'm going to have to harvest these. So if that one's rotting, and that one's rotting, then it would be wise for me to harvest all of them so they don't all rot. This is a lesson I'm learning about companion planting and succession planting in a vegetable garden. If you plant things that need water beside things that need to not be watered right now, you're going to have a problem where watering, say, the tomatoes and the carrots that are growing on now will cause rot in your garlic and in your potatoes when they need to not be watered and they need to die off. So I need to choose to plant my garlic and my potatoes away from other vegetables that will need to be continuing to be watered. Contour 3 on the north. Recently cleaned up. In fact, I just did that this week. And now you can see all the succulents I have along here. There are some gaps where I could do with some more chop and drop plants, but I've planted arrowroot in a few more different places, so that will come up too. And the pigeon pea is still growing along here. This Okinawa spinach is a great addition to meals, and I'm really enjoying adding that to salad. I've planted a number of agave along here. I can slice the leaves off to put on the chop and drop row, and we'll see how they go as chop and drop. I finally got down here to clean up contour 3 at the eastern end. We had a whole lot of daikon radish growing along here, so I spread their seeds along the row, which will mean we'll have some daikon radish we can eat, as well as some in the chop and drop row. This end of contour 3 is still very weedy. I'll get to this end eventually. My sweet potato along the back here has recently been harvested. And as much as I love that wildlife loves my garden, it's a little bit depressing to come along and see a sweet potato, as you dig it up, is completely hollowed out. And there were a number of sweet potatoes that have been hollowed out like that. I suspect it was the antechinus that we have here, a native marsupial rodent. The sweet potato was growing up all into the fruit tree row. At the moment, the fruit trees we have here are 1, 2, and a third fig in the middle of that jungle. So I do need to plant some other fruit trees along here. If my papaya seeds sprout, I will have papayas along here too. But I think there's space for other trees as well. This form of sweet potato has not been producing very well. I haven't managed to find any tubers from this sweet potato at all. It did have quite some weed pressure on it, so maybe it'll produce better without that weed pressure. This sweet potato patch has once again produced a good bucket of sweet potatoes. And we've been enjoying eating the fresh tips of the sweet potatoes too. You can eat those leaves, just pop them in a mixed salad. So I'm going to move away from keeping my sweet potato on my vegetable rows. As you can see, it frequently grows into the fruit trees and I have to clean it out so it doesn't smother them. Instead, I'm thinking I will start a system where I grow it in the centre of this grassed area here. And that way, when it wants to spread, we can just mow below this bed and above that bed, and that will keep the sweet potato contained. My apple plants are still growing really slowly, but they're growing. Fennel going to seed. I think I'll have to chop that out because I don't want it seeding everywhere. We're still using this fennel. They're not getting as thick and lush and juicy as the ones you usually buy in the shop, but I figure that's because they're grown under specific conditions. They're a little bit less wild conditions than what my garden receives. And this garden is waiting for the new season of potato planting, which will start in 1 month. My pomegranate tree has some fruit coming. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that have set. Well, that looks really good. We had 7 off this tree last year as its first year bearing. So I'm looking forward to some pomegranate this year. And you can see here we've got lots of carrots. I sprinkled carrot seeds amongst the brassicas. These brassicas haven't grown very well this year. They feel like they're stunted. It's probably a nutrition thing. The soil is very clay. There's not a lot of organic matter in it. I have been harvesting mulch from my chook pen to put on this garden. Now I have a new contour. Contour 4 on the north. I've planted melons and I've planted pigeon pea seeds along here. Unfortunately, we haven't had any rain, so it's not growing. But the grass is growing and I'm going to have to get the brush cutter and brush that down. I can't use the mower to mow that area because of the plants I've already planted, and there are a large number of rocks in there. One of the things I'm thinking of doing for this row is planting wattles as the main chop and drop plant. So lots of different types of wattles. That will make rather prolific chop and drop. This one's a cherry guava and it's growing happy. It seems to have got over its transplant shock. And I have a melon plant there as well, so that when I water one, the other one also gets water. Daikon radish was the other thing I planted along here, and so some of those are coming up. This melon plant seems to be growing far better than the plant I planted it near. So I'll keep that running along the long grass, and the long grass will actually be useful preventing the fruit from being sunburnt. This was a lychee, but I think she's dead. I'll have to replace that with another fruit tree. Seed-grown nectarine, looking very happy. Just keep the stem free from any shoots. Seed-grown apricot, doing very well. And this nectarine is being smothered by grass, but is quite happy about it. I do have plans to plant a few more plants along here so that the garden bed comes all the way out here and the path continues down this way, sloping this way. That's important because the land actually slopes down that way and the water will be encouraged to run down onto the garden bed. If I was to put a path there, the water would be encouraged to run down the hill further and we'd lose that valuable resource. By allowing the bed to come all the way here, the water will continue down the hill and be caught by the bed and sunk into the ground, and that's what we want. That poinciana's growing back after being pruned down. I'll have to take those lower branches off, but it can continue to grow until we get to winter. And at that time we'll need sun for the vegetables, so I'll chop it back. But for now, I'm grateful for the canopy and for the shade provided by these trees. And that's my garden. Thanks for coming for a walk around with me. It's summer, so there's not going to be a lot of productivity in this garden right now, but I'm very strongly feeling the need to expand, to build new gardens, to develop the property further than just within this garden area. Thus the bananas and putting more effort into the hedgerow. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely, productive day.